I've been doing flatbedding videos. I've done an unboxing and a new product, but I know what you guys want. You guys want trucking companies, and this is one of the great ones. You guys all remember when I did Monfort a little bit ago, we talked about the left lane, how the left lane was the Monfort lane. A lot of you guys told me I actually didn't know this at the time, but if the left lane was the Monfort lane, what was the right lane? The McLean Lane. Here's a story of a great man, a big trucking company, but also a man who changed the way shipping is done all over the world with just an idea that he had. All right, guys. Well, it's been a little bit. I've been, so busy doing flatbedding and, getting into the flatbedding world and everything else. Done quite a few different things, but I got all these trucking companies I'm working on. Stand by till the end. I'll tell you what's going on with the new pen story. That's going to come out soon. But one thing when I did the Monfort story, all about, left lane being the Monfort lane, a lot of people came back, and like I said, I didn't know this, that they called the right lane the McLean Lane. Apparently they were the slowest trucks around. I heard they were horribly slow. But their story is pretty incredible. Not so much the trucking company, actually the founder of the trucking company. His story is pretty incredible. So as always, I got my notes here and just did a whole lot of studying up on this. Pretty interesting. So let's get into it. McLean Trucking was founded in 1934 in Raleigh, North Carolina by Malcolm McLean. They later moved to Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Like so many other companies being regulated in the mid-20th century, most of McLean's expansion came out of acquiring other companies. McLean bought American Trucking Company in 1945, P-E-E-D-E-E Express in 1947, and Simpson Motor Lines in 1948. So before and during World War II, obviously these times are after World War II, before and during World War II, they basically ran from North Carolina into the Northeast. And the information I got, this was actually, I believe this information came from a Freightways article that I read, said that they went to the Northeast and into southern New England. I always thought the Northeast was New England. I guess, I don't know. I guess I live in the Northeast being in Pennsylvania, but I don't live in New England. So I guess that's what they meant by that. But yeah, so after World War II, that's when they bought up all these companies, PD, American Trucking, and Simpson. McLean worked at expanding further into New England and to the south. So I guess that's the lanes that they got from these because, the world was regulated at that time in trucking. In the 1950s, though, they worked on expanding into the Midwest. And they did this by acquiring Carolina Motor Express lines in 1952. So I don't believe that has anything to do with the other Carolina that we're all thinking of. Obviously this was in 1952, and the Carolina I know of, which is on the list to do a story on, I believe is a whole different company. So in 1952, Malcolm McLean also had the idea to have a trailer style that could be loaded onto ships and taken from North Carolina to New York and other ports, allowing his company to only do shorter trips than what is regulated by the ICC. Yeah. Know where I'm going with this? All right, so his idea was that if he could do in-state deliveries only the ICC would have no control over his company. I said in a lot of videos, I'm studying up a lot on deregulation. I did not realize that, but it does make sense. The ICC is federal, so they wouldn't control you in your state if you were doing all interstate, so you wouldn't actually have to follow the Motor Carrier Act of 1932, not to be mistaken for the Motor Carrier Act of 1980. But the problem with his idea, he wanted to put trailers on ships and move them up and down, not regulated. He's on the water, and then they hook up to a truck. The problem is that trailers are a lot of wasted space. It would not be efficient because of the chassis. When you picture the trailer, you know, you got all that chassis space underneath, and when you're thinking of putting it on a ship, it's taking up way too much space. You guys still see where I'm going with this, right? Well, here we go. Malcolm McLean came up with the idea to remove the box from the chassis and ship just the box, or as we know it, the intermodal container. So Malcolm McLean, pretty much, I haven't heard that anybody else collaborated on this. I heard pretty much that he single-handedly invented the intermodal container, which, as we all know, is huge. I don't know how much freight goes on containers overall, but I mean, it's a huge amount. So when he did this, at the time, I guess this was another regulation. I guess we used to have crazy regulations. When he did this, a trucking company was not allowed to own a boat shipping company. How crazy is that? I didn't know that was ever a thing. So at that time, Malcolm sold McLean Trucking for $6 million. That's what I heard in the FreightWaves article. Now, I used a lot of different articles to get this information. I also heard somewhere else that he sold it for $12 million. Obviously, that's pretty far apart, but what does it matter? He sold it. And actually, till we get to the end of his life, it was, you know, chump change. I really hope that someday I can think, I really hope someday somebody says, hey, Rob had $6 million, but really that was just chump change till the end of his life. Anyway, he sold it for $6 million. He did it in order to continue his dreams of shipping containers, and he started McLean Industries. So here's where things really get crazy. McLean had an idea that oil tankers, boats, not, you know, tankers going down the road, oil tanker boats had all this space on top that they were using for nothing. So McLean bought an oil tanker called the Ideal X. He added a steel deck to support the containers that he intended to put on it, and basically now was able to utilize an otherwise unused area of the oil tanker. So on April 25th, 1956, that's actually just a year, a little bit over a year before my dad was born. See, Dad, I know your birthday. Anyway, the Ideal X left Newark, New Jersey, and it sailed to Houston with 58 containers on the top of it. It was the first time a container ship ever went down the road, because there was no such thing as a container ship or even containers until he invented it. The success of this trip made McLean start a company called Sealand, C-S-E-A -land. But you know, because I have a picture of it. All right, so where do you think the first ever container port was started? Not the first port, but the first container port. Well, it was started in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and actually it was started by the Port Authority of New York. I don't know if the Port Authority of New York is still involved in that, or if they still own it. I do know I've recently been told that ports in New Jersey are still very corrupt. In fact, I've been advised not to deal with ports in New Jersey. Pretty interesting thing there that I'm probably never even going to look into anymore. But due to the Vietnam War, the first overseas container ports were opened in Asia. Pretty interesting. These ports allowed goods to be shipped at a much lower price because of the efficiency. There was something else I read that actually said before what actually sparked McLean doing this was that he had watched other, ships being loaded piece by piece, and it would actually take 8 days at each end, from the loading to the unloading to do this. And he felt that there was a much more efficient way. So here's one. So he sold McLean Trucking for either 6 million or 12 million. This is why I say, that's really nothing. Is because in 1969, Malcolm McLean sold Sealand for $160 million in 1969. All right, so that's what happened with him. Let's get back to his former company. So while this is going on, his former company, McLean Trucking, is thriving. And this continued through the late 70s, even despite the oil embargo that hurt them a bit, but not, it didn't put them out of business. The oil embargo hurt a lot of people. In 1978, McLean claimed revenues of $440 million and profit of $15.5 million. In 1979, the company saw a rise of $43 million in revenue to $483 million, but profits were cut almost in half to $8 million. McLean Trucking blamed this on a 12-day Teamster strike. So 12 days cut it in half, but I imagine it took a whole lot of time to catch up from that 12 days. So a 12-day strike, which it said it actually shut down their business altogether. It probably took a long time to get back from that. And then, just like so many companies, what am I going to say now? Deregulation changed everything. Motor Carrier Act of 1980. So McLean saw a 30% revenue increase to $725 million in 1980. But their profit on that was a $20 million loss. And this was because the trucks were deadheading too much, rates were cut everywhere. I mean, you can imagine what a fiasco that was at that point. Despite this, they decided to continue on, and they opened 10 new terminals that year. They were the 4th largest common carrier in the United States in 1980. So at that point, they owned 206 terminals in 42 states, DC, and British Columbia, Canada. Well, here's their profits, here's their revenue over the next 40 years. Actually, I only see the loss. They didn't even show revenue anymore. In 1982, they lost $12.4 million. In 1983, they lost $35.2 million and $39 million in 1984. Wow. In 1985, the workers took a 15% pay cut to help the company survive. Man, this sounds a lot like Yellow in the much later years. Anyway, the pay cut didn't work. Pay cut that they took did not work. 10,000 people lost their jobs in 1986 when McLean Trucking went bankrupt. So, as far as shipping and trucking goes, hats off to you, Malcolm McLean. You deserve it. You're going to get another story because there's so much more to tell about the container, about how it happened, this involves R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company, a whole bunch of other people that got involved to help invest in this company. He actually went bankrupt at one point years later after making $160 million. He went bankrupt at one point, but continued going. He's been involved in real estate. He was involved in all kinds of other things from 1969 until 2001. May of 2001, he died at 87 years of age at his home in Orange Beach, Alabama. As I said, though, I am going to do another story. So now we've covered both lanes. Left lane, Monfort, get out of the way. Right lane, slow down and hang out with the McLean trucks. But another great man in trucking and actually shipping overall. The way we ship everything, over the country or over the world. Pretty cool story. Like I said, there is going to be a follow-up to Malcolm McLean. I found a whole bunch of information out about him while I was doing this, but I decided to hold back on most of it because that's a whole nother story. This story was about McLean Trucking, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. My next story, I promised this last time, was New Penn, but New Penn is actually their original building. Well, I don't know their original, but the building they were in up to a couple years ago is still there. I believe from Google Pictures, it actually still has a sign and everything. So I'm actually going to go and do an on location, even if the sign isn't up and everything. Just a little bit more fun than just sitting here in my office in the basement doing this. So I'll actually do it there. Hopefully the sign and everything's up, but I'm going to do a New Penn story. Actually, I'm going to do it tomorrow, and you'll have it here real soon. So guys, thanks as always for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.